Mr. Dennis.
Mr. Boissonnault, you said today that you came to the term non-status adopted Cree through consultation with an Indigenous researcher. What was the name of that researcher?
I met with Chad Cowie, who was a student.
Thank you very much. We know. Thank you. We know who Mr. Cowie is, Professor Cowie is. In an interview with the National Post, Professor Cowie denied your version of events. The National Post quotes him as saying, "I would not say that I gave him the term that he was non-status adopted Cree." Did Professor Cowie tell the truth to the National Post, and do you now want to correct your opening statement?
My opening statement was very clear, Mr. Genuous. I said that I chose the term non-status adopted Cree after having a conversation with Mr. Cowie. That conversation was almost 3 years ago.
So now it's clearer than it was. So you sat down with Professor Cowie, and he gave you some advice. You ignored that advice and came up with this term independently on your own, and then you came back to committee and said, well, in the context of conversation, I came up with this term. I mean, frankly, that's what we've come to expect from you, Mr. Boissonnault, but I think it's now further revelation of what we have come to expect. My next question is, the Liberal Party's Indigenous Peoples Commission put up an Instagram post on June 30th, 2016, which falsely claimed that you were Indigenous. Now, that post is still up. Wow. You said the error was corrected. Why were social media posts falsely calling you Indigenous left up right even till the present day?
I don't have an answer for why that's still on that party website, Mr. Genuous. I can tell you when I was on a list of Indigenous candidates in the 2019 election, I acted very quickly and removed that.
Okay. So let's just get some clarity on what you meant when you said that the error was corrected. So there was an error in a June 30th, 2016 Instagram post. That error was not corrected. The post remains up today in December of 2024. What exactly did you mean when you said the error was corrected?
Mr. Genuous, I wasn't aware of that 2016 Instagram post. I was referring to the list of Indigenous candidates in 2019 that I was falsely on and made that correct. And the error
Okay. So you corrected a list in 2019, apparently, but you and your team are not closely monitoring the social media activity of the party that you're a part of. Was the false claim that the Liberals elected 9 Indigenous MPs in 2015, was that false claim ever used in Liberal Party fundraising?
I don't have that information in front of me, and I would not be on that list of candidates.
Okay, so maybe we need to follow up and see how much money the Liberal Party raised off the false claim that there were 9 Indigenous MPs elected in their caucus in 2015. Mr. Boissonnault, you have said repeatedly that you've never claimed Indigenous status. And it should be obvious to everyone that that is an intentional formulation when you say you've never claimed Indigenous status, because that is not the same thing as saying you've never claimed to be Indigenous. A person might claim to be Indigenous without claiming Indigenous status. So let's get around the lawyerly formulation here and ask you the core question. Have you ever claimed to be Indigenous?
Mr. Genuous, I'm not Indigenous, and I've never claimed to be Indigenous or to have Indigenous status. This is a distinction. I'm not sure where you're going with this, but I'm not Indigenous. I don't have Indigenous status, and I've never claimed either.
You've never claimed to be Indigenous. So on April the 12th, 2016, when you said in the House of Commons that as a Canadian and as an adopted Cree, you weren't claiming to be Indigenous. When the Liberal Party of Canada posted that you were Indigenous and it was not corrected, you still had never claimed to be Indigenous. When your partner claimed that your company was Indigenous owned, you had still never claimed to be Indigenous. There are all these people around you that have publicly claimed that you are Indigenous. You have said in the House of Commons that you're Indigenous, and now you're before this committee saying that you never did. How can anyone believe anything you say, Mr. Boissonnault?
Mr. Genuous, I've never claimed to be Indigenous. What I said in
it's on the
the
record.
House was that that is not. You're misinterpreting the record.
Okay, we'll let
what I
Mr.
said.
Boissonnault answer the question, and then that's
I've
the
misinterpreted
How many
that
seconds
round.
do I have, Mr. Chair?
You can answer the question, and that'll be the end of this round.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I have never indicated to the Liberal Party of Canada that I'm Indigenous, full stop. And I tried to come up with a term that I now understand was not clear. For the record, I'm not Indigenous. I don't have Indigenous status, and I would not claim either.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Genuous. I'm sorry. We go to Mr. Barrett for 5 minutes. Sorry, I apologize.
Mr. Boissonnault, on November 15th, your disclosure with the Ethics Commissioner's Office was updated to reflect a loan receivable from an individual. Is that related to any business venture, including Ms. Poon, Mr. Anderson, GHI, or Xenex, or to your collapsing or surrendering your shares in GHI?
No.
Who's the individual?
That is a matter that is with the Ethics Commissioner, and that's where it should stay.
Well, I'll note for you, sir, that it's not your prerogative to not answer questions. You cannot refuse to answer a question before a parliamentary committee. Are you refusing to tell us the name of the individual, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, can we have clarification on that? This information is with the Ethics Commissioner, and that's where it should reside.
Stop time, Chair.
Yep, sorry, stop.
Point of order on that, too?
Okay.
If the member wants to bring ethics commissioner questions or ethics question, he's a member of the ethics commissioner's ethics committee. He can bring that over there. This is not related to what we're discussing today. And I agree.
No,
It
yeah,
is between. It's a
I
matter
agree, that
between
is-
the ethics commissioner and individuals.
that
He
is
doesn't
debate.
share his private information with everyone. It is with the ethics commissioner, and she should have the respect to have the respect with other members of parliament.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Duran. Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Duran.
It's going to come back on you guys. You know that.
Okay.
Go that low.
Okay. Mr. Barrett, the floor is yours.
You
Thank
go that low.
I'll give the rest of my time to Mr. Shields.
Okay. Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Boissonnault, for being here. You made the comment that you've made amends for the mistakes that you have made. The Liberal Party publications have been out there and referred to a number of times today. Has the Liberal Party apologized for the mistakes they made that you asked them to correct?
Thank you, Mr. Shields. And I think I would say that I'm in the process of making amends. I think it's a longer process. I've apologized. I think that was the right place to start. And the Liberal Party corrected the error in 2019. And I'm not responsible for posts that I didn't design or post. And I'm not aware if they made an apology, but they certainly corrected the 2019 error.
Made an apology, and you said they made the error. They've corrected it, but not apologized. That's my understanding, your answer?
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, a prime minister committed, I better read a quote to you, a prime minister committed to true reconciliation would have removed Randy from cabinet long ago. Instead, we get to watch white people play ancestry, Wheel of Fortune. So shameful and extremely destructive. Are you familiar with that quote?
I am not.
Comes from your colleague, your former colleague, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Former colleague.
Acquaintance.
Do you believe in that, what she has stated in that quote?
Mr. Shields, I have no response to that. I'm focused on clearing my name and helping everybody understand that I'm not Indigenous and I've never claimed to be Indigenous, and I don't claim Indigenous status, and I never have.
So she's very disappointed in what has occurred as the first Indigenous cabinet minister in the role that she played as Indigenous minister, and she's very disappointed. So what has that reflected on the Indigenous people in our country as we had a leading cabinet minister, first Indigenous in that role that she played? She has a significant voice in this country, and she's very disappointed. What's your opinion of why Indigenous people should not be disappointed in this situation?
Mr. Shields, with all due respect, I have no comment on that. I'm focused on myself and my commitment to reconciliation.
When we talk about reputations that you are looking at rebuilding, as you said, and rebuilding it with Indigenous. In public life, no matter what level you are, whether you're a sports person, whether you're in politics, a simple mistake basically is irreparable. How do you believe you can rebuild this reputation with Indigenous people in this country?
I think the conversations will be really important, and I have started that work with elders, with community leaders, with individuals who have reached out to me. And Mr. Shields, those conversations, I will keep doing those conversations. I'll keep having those conversations, and I will do the work of reconciliation, of being an ally and a champion to Indigenous peoples, and that is how I will continue to serve as a member of Parliament for Edmonton Centre, because it's my duty and it's my firm commitment to Indigenous peoples.
As you mentioned, representing your constituents in your constituency, this is major. This is not a minor where the first baseman of the New York Mets missed a ball coming down the line. This is a major personality challenge. How can you continue to represent all of those constituents in your riding with these major disasters?
Mr. Shields, I think it's by being honest with people and being straightforward, and it's in part why I am happy to answer your questions and the questions of all members here today. I think it's a part of doing the work, and that's what I will do.
So, time's up.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. We now continue. Mr. Genuous.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Boissonnault, you granted a personal loan and you wouldn't answer Mr. Barrett's questions about who it was to. I do understand the sensitivities around this, but the committee does have a hard time believing you and obviously has many questions about your business dealings. So I want to ask, would you be willing to provide that name in writing to the committee with the understanding that it would not be made public unless the committee saw it as being in the public interest to be made public? Would you be willing to provide the name on that basis?
Mr. Genuous, I will share this with the committee. It is to a loan for a friend for a property, and it's not appropriate to share that person's name with the committee or with Canadians.
Okay, my request was that it would be provided on a private basis to the committee for the committee to consider, and it sounds like you're not willing to do that. So we'll move on to the next question. You continued to own GHI after you were elected. When did you step back from GHI operations?
Once I was elected in September of 2021, I sent an email to my lawyer who contacted Mr. Anderson's lawyer to let them know that I was stepping away from the company.
Okay. GHI claimed to be a wholly Indigenous-owned company in a bid made in June 2020. So you had not stepped aside at that point. You were involved in the operation of the company when it claimed to be fully Indigenous-owned. Were you aware of the bid made for masks from the federal government in June of 2020?
No, Mr. Anderson was uniquely and totally responsible for federal contracts. It would have been inappropriate for me to work on any federal contracts. I confirmed that with the ethics commissioner, and it was the same approach that I used.
Mr. Boissonnault, we're talking about a time. Let's underline the date, June of 2020. We're talking about a time when you were not elected. You have said, and this is obviously disputed, but you have said you stepped back from any involvement in the company after you were elected. But we're talking about a time when you were not elected, and therefore when the company was still claiming to be wholly Indigenous owned. So in June of 2020, were you aware of bids, a bid for masks, to provide masks to the federal government?
Mr. Genuous, I've been very clear that I worked with the ethics commissioner, and I was very clear with Mr. Anderson that any federal contracts were entirely his responsibility.
And you're saying that included the time when you were not elected?
Absolutely. There was a wall in our company so that I would not have anything to do with federal contracts. It would be inappropriate. I was still governed by lobbying provisions. I took my
And at no point in that bid did he ever even ask you if you were Indigenous? Just answer the question.
Mr. Genuous had the floor.
Did he at any point ask you if you were Indigenous? How did he come to the conclusion that you were Indigenous?
He did not, and none of our company was certified Indigenous,
Yeah.
so he should not have done this at all. And I'm glad that the provisions, the safeguards, prevented
Okay.
the
All
company
right.
from getting
so
that
I guess
contract.
I guess we're to believe that Mr. Anderson sat down with the Liberal Party of Canada and they both decided to falsely claim you were Indigenous without ever consulting you. Mr. Boissonnault, you've said that your Cree name means strong eagle man. Now, I've consulted with Indigenous leaders on this. I understand that being gifted a traditional name has a very specific cultural and ceremonial context. I wonder if you could share with the committee what that name is, when you were given it, who gave it to you, and what was the ceremony involved?
Absolutely, that is a gift of the name and an eagle feather by Elder Ed LaValle of the Edmonton Two Spirit Society, and that was done in a medicine blanket ceremony the Friday before the election in 2021, and it was the Elder Ed LaValle presided at that ceremony. My mom attended that ceremony, and I really respect that gift. And the Cree name is Maskau Kihiyu, and it translates into strong eagle man. And the reason that the Two Spirits Society conferred this great honor on me is because they said I gave voice to the voiceless. And that the reason they chose strong eagle man was because I would be flying back and forth to Ottawa after the election, and it was my responsibility to take care of it.
Okay, well, we'll be able to verify that, and I do thank you for providing that context. Finally, you said that you participated in the Liberal Indigenous caucus as an ally. Were there ever any other non-Indigenous people who were counted as members of the Liberal Indigenous caucus? Because all of the public representations of the Liberal Indigenous caucus exclusively show members of Parliament who are or have claimed to be Indigenous. So why is it that there were no other people invited into the caucus on the same basis that you were?
I'm not sure that other allies made the same representation that I did, but when we met as a caucus between 2015 and 2019.
But can you just confirm then that that's a no, that you were the only one?
No, Mr. Genuous, we frequently opened the meeting up to other allies.
No, but you were a member, right?
Point of order,
I was
Mr.
a
Chair.
regular.
Point of order.
Okay, time has expired. Time has just expired. Do you still have a point of order?
Well, yeah, with all due respect to Mr. Genuous, if he wants to join our Liberal caucus, he can join, and we'll explain to him how we work inside our caucus, but our caucus is none of his business.
All right, thank you, Mr. Drew. That's not a point of
But
order.
just on the point of order, there are public posts about this Liberal Indigenous caucus which show its members. So it's
Point of
convenient
order.
for it now to be a
Debate.
private caucus
Debate.
matter.
Debate.
Time is up.